Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Odette Nerd here. Welcome to vlog for November day 2. Tonight's video stream, if you watch it, a fair amount of talking and then a little bit of coding on the end as I was stumbling through some things. So here's what happened between the vlog yesterday and the vlog now. I recorded the vlog yesterday and then went back and committed some code, which I'm going to do again today because as it transpires, I completely lost track of how long it takes to pull HD footage off of my camcorder. Um, it doesn't use USB 3 as near as I can see, and I don't have a USB 3 card reader at the moment. Chances are good I'm going to have one before December is done because it takes a long time to pull even a 9-minute clip off of the camera. Up to now, all of my videos have been really long and I expected them to take a long time to come across. So I just sort of started it and walked away. So there's that. I had ended last night with trying to decide how I wanted to be able to transmit messages around in sort of a binary format, if you will, and flesh that out a little bit. This morning, during the day, I did some more research into some topics in Python and how its networking works to make sure that it more or less aligned with how I expect the Socket API to work from all of my experience in doing that sort of thing in C over the years. Um, and I got distracted myself there for a second. I came up with what I think is the plan for the structure of the network code and all of the parts that it's going to need and how to put them together. So the first 30 minutes or so of the stream tonight was actually me going over that design. So I'm not going to rehash that here. If you're interested in the design, you want to go ahead and jump into the uh, the archive for November day 2 and watch the first half hour to see all of the parts. But just very 10,000 foot level, there'll be one manager object that's inherently responsible for running the thread and doing all of the IO. You ask it to make a connection, it gives you a connection object, and then from there you can put messages of the protocol message type into it to send them to the other side. And when you receive messages from the other side, a notification will pop for a callback you write that will allow you to get at the actual received messages and do something with it. And that's all going to be transparently handled. I have a pretty good idea how that's going to work. We did not actually work on that tonight. The only coding that happened tonight was in preparing how the protocol message is going to work. And realistically, it's a pretty simple design for a class. There'll be one base class, and then you subclass that to implement new message types. Each message type has to provide an integer that's unique that represents that message, and a method that knows how to take an instance of that class and encode it into binary data, and a class method that knows how to take a blob of data and decode it back into an instance of that class. And then there's just a little bit of helper glue code in there to make it easier so that you can just pass the protocol message class a blob of data and it'll introspect it itself and figure out what message is actually in there. That's all powered by the struct.pack and struct.unpack methods in Python. Now, I have used those exactly one time in all of my Python programming, and it wasn't actually anything to do with Sublime Text at all. As a matter of fact, if you're familiar with stock market type stuff, and I don't know why you would be, the feed coming out of the New York Stock Exchange, the SIAC feed, went binary, and I wrote some tools in Python to encode data into binary so that I could create messages in binary to pass them to my feed parsing code to see if I could correctly interpret messages because we had problems connecting to their test feeds. Um, and that worked at the time. I did find it sort of mystifying. So I wanted to spend tonight figuring out the ins and outs of that. And if you watch the last part of the stream, we actually learned, I think, a fair bit about, or at least I did anyway, about that sort of thing. Um, I verified that the floating point formats that Python uses, which is IEEE something something, can't remember the number off the top of my head. It has a 32-bit and a 64-bit format. C Sharp in .NET Core seems to use the exact same formats, so that's good. That means we can, if we need to transmit floats without having to do something special, which is one of those things that actually kicks me in the butt at work a lot. We deal with VMS machines, and not only do they have a different endian, they also have a different floating port format, which makes us unhappy, which also calls to mind the notion that all of our network transmissions are going to be in network byte order, which it turns out, and if you were didn't remember, I certainly don't, was big endian. Because I know big endian and little endian exist and what the differences of them are, but it impinges on my life so infrequently that I can't remember off the top of my head which one is network and which one is what Intel's use. I just know that they're not the same. But struct.pack totally is capable of doing that. So we did some work in some sample packing of things and ran into, if you might, issues with sending variable length strings across, because there's no way to do that. You can only send fixed length strings. So you have to do a little bit of jiggery to include in your format string and struct pack the size of the bytes object that's going to represent the string, followed by the bytes object. Um, and then on the other end, you have to partially decode messages up until the part where the string is and do stuff with them there. There's probably better ways to do that. Um, I'm gonna, it's definitely possible. I didn't quite get finished with that because I wanted to call the stream to get this vlog recording. So I'll probably, if I get time tomorrow, do more work on that before the stream happens. Otherwise, the plan for tomorrow is to continue with finishing up that protocol message class and making sure it works for a couple of simple cases, just enough to give us a couple of different message types, and then we can move into starting the actual network core. And we're going to be doing all of that actually in a not in a plugin, but just in a standard Python source file, which I've done before, just to make sure I have the code working the way I expect, and then we can easily pull that into the plugin. That's all I got for vlogs tonight. It was actually, I don't know, I thought it was a good time. I it One of the things that happens in November a lot when you're working on something new is research into how to do things. So I think this is capturing that perfectly, and I really wanted to get my design out there. So again, if you want to know the design for what the network code is going to be, you're going to have to skip on over to the archive of the thing and watch it. Otherwise, time to call this vlog to an end so I can get it processing and uploading. So remember to stay sublime.